How's it going, guys? I'm Connor from Running Warehouse, and we're back with episode 8 of the Running Warehouse Connection, our weekly show where we bring the running community together to talk about anything and everything running related. This week, we have another ultra marathon legend. He's been in the sport for over 20 years, and even at 48 years old, he's still competing up with the young guns and some of the biggest ultras in the world. We've got Jeff Browning. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm stoked.
I'm stoked as well. And let's dive right into it. I know you've been in the sport for over 20 years, and I'm sure things have changed quite a bit. Can you talk about how you actually got into the sport of ultramarathon running?
Yeah, I was a graphic designer at the time and mountain biker, rock climber, backpack, that kind of stuff. Mainly a mountain biker. And I got into the sport I had a buddy who had just run a 50K, and he'd run a few marathons and a 50K, and he was telling me about these trail races, and I kind of not really, I'd heard of them loosely, but never really thought about them because I was a mountain biker. I'd heard of Leadville 100, but it was mainly from the mountain biking side. And I didn't give much thought about the trail running side. And he kind of introduced me to Western States 100 and like this trail running community thing. And I kind of was interested. I was always a runner on the side. I ran in high school, ran track and track and field. And so I always was always a runner just to stay fit, a little bit for climbing and that kind of thing, but mainly considered myself a mountain biker. And then, we decided I worked at a running store, a specialty running store in college. It was also a bike shop. And I mainly got the job because it was a bike shop, but I ended up selling shoes. And one of the things about retail sales, and if you're a specialty running store, you have all the cool hardcore runners come into your shop. And so I got introduced to all these marathoners. And so that put a bug in my head, be like, I want to run a marathon someday. And so, fast forward to 2000 when I moved to Bend, Oregon, and my buddy was like introducing me to ultras. And I said, well, I'd like to run a 50K, but I better run a marathon first. So that summer, 2000, I ran a half marathon, a marathon, and then the beginning of 01. So I guess 20 years ago exactly, February of 01, I ran a 50K in the coastal range in Oregon. And it was muddy and it was gnarly, but I did it and I was hooked. I was like, I'm going to do that again. And it hurt like crazy, but I was just hooked on the community, like the culture, the training was fun. I think one of the things that really attracted me to trail running originally from mountain biking is that in mountain biking, you could only ride so much technical terrain with the good skills. You have to come with be able to what if you break a chain? What if you have a flat tire? There's mechanical stuff you have to deal with. But also you're restricted with trail access. Like you can't go into wilderness areas, you can't go into steep terrain because you can't ride up side of a mountain. What really attracted me to trail running is once I had the fitness is that you can kind of go anywhere. You can go on foot, you can go off trail, you can go on trail, you can scramble up summits. And as a climber, that was attractive to me, was summiting things. So there are a lot of things that kind of drew me into that culture.
Yeah. And when we look at, you said you started with a 50K and that was in 2001. There was, when we look at racing today, there's an ultra marathon every weekend all over the country.
Totally.
There's so many races. When we go back 20 years ago, what was the ultra marathon racing scene like?
Well, there were only 7 or 8 races in Oregon at the time. I remember because I used to follow a website called run100s.com, which is it's like a super generic, Stan Jensen manages it. I think it's still up today, but it looks like 1997 still. But that was the informational website at the time. And I remember they have a list of hundreds in North America. And I think there were 3,300s in North America. Now I think we have almost 200. So just in 100 milers, not counting 50Ks, 50 milers, 100Ks. So the racing scene and trail running scene and ultras has blown up. It's gigantic. And so you can, there's so many options. But back then there were only, handful of, there's 3,300s, there were maybe 8 races in Oregon, maybe about the same in Washington. So we ended up doing there was an Oregon Ultra Series at the time, and it was I think it may have been 6 or 7 races. And if you did all of them, you got points, and then there was you got a mug or something at the end of the year or something, if you were, or something, I can't remember. But yeah, it's changed a ton. Competition's changed as well.
Yeah, we see that a lot with a lot of the new young guns coming out, and the competition, it just every year it seems like it's raising so much. So you got to step up your game. But, even at your age of 48, I'm looking at the results, and you're keeping up with a lot of these young guys that have very good credentials on the road and on the track. How have you been able to keep such a high level of fitness at your age?
Well, it has to do with everything besides running. Nutrition's number one. My nutritional game is really dialed in. I've really been, gone to a real food, whole foods diet. It's mainly more of a paleo or primal blueprint, or nutrivore is the new term, which means nutrient dense foods. So real foods are really important. I do minimize grains and sugar in my everyday diet. I mean, I'm not 100% cut them out. I'm not hardcore, but I do minimize them, so they're more for special occasions or stuff like that, or when I'm traveling a little, so I'm not crazy strict, but I do prioritize, for example, there's a local ranch that I get grass-fed, grass-finished beef from that gets delivered to my door, from a local place. So I have a deep freeze full of really good meat. I prioritize red meat, especially. I also really prioritize mobility and strength, especially strength. So I do strength training. Well, with the whole COVID thing going on and the lockdown, I launched with my athletes I coach, I launched a challenge for us to do a 7-day body weight challenge, where we did push-ups and pull-ups and air squats and planks and a whole bunch of other stuff, a little bit of band work. And it was a 15 or 20-minute routine, and we were going to do it for 7 days. Well, at the end of 7 days, one of my athletes put a little bug in my ear and said, "Hey, what if we did this as a last person standing?" And so we threw it out to the group. 7 people did it. Now we're down to 4. I'm one of the final 4. And we've been going 55 days at this point. We've done body weight strength for 55 days straight. So my strength right now is off the charts as far as core strength, because I haven't missed a day. It's really been great. I've never been this consistent. I usually 2 or 3 days a week I do strength, some core work. I do full body, so upper body, lower body, core, but usually with some weights. With this one, I've been doing body weight every day, and then I do weighted legs 2 of those days a week. So I substitute whatever air thing air squats or whatever we're doing with weighted deadlifts and Bulgarian split squats and stuff like that. So strength's a huge one. I really prioritized that when around the time I turned 40. I'd always lifted weights, but I'd always been very inconsistent. I'd get on it for a while, and I really did a good job in the off season, but in the middle of the summer, I would kind of fall off the horse a little bit. I'd miss a week here, 2 weeks there. And, I really started prioritizing when I turned 40. So I've read some studies on our protein synthesis slows down at age 35, and we just don't synthesize protein as well. So I really prioritize protein intake. About my body, I weigh about 140 pounds. So about 140 grams of protein a day. So whatever you weigh, you should hit that in grams per day. So I really prioritize protein intake from a nutritional standpoint, and then strength training so you don't lose muscle mass. And that's kept my muscles really being able to fire at a high level. And I'm still motivated. I think the other piece of that is you have to have the mental motivation to go train hard. I have to go put in the work. I have to go train hard. I got to go run vert. I got to run in the mountains. I got to do speed work, and I like doing that stuff, and I still am motivated to do it. And I think if I ever lost the motivation, that's when you'll see me slow down. But until then, I'm trying to ward off old age and try to be that guy that's like the voice for the old folks out there. But
Yeah, motivation for me, and I think a lot of runners out there is such a key factor. And I can
absolutely.
see when you're talking about taking this like almost ultra marathon philosophy and putting it into your core routine of every day doing this, it's cool to see that. So, I think that is a part of the puzzle that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's been shown through this pandemic is like, where's your motivation, right? We've lost races have been canceled. Like you see who uses those, that's their motivation, is that race, and who has the motivation no matter what, right? Like I found no problem with motivation through this. I have ways of motivating myself no matter what. So the races, like I'm bummed because I love hanging out with the community and I like going to races and I like racing. But also like that's another deeper conversation I've had with my coaching clients is like, what is running to you, right? Is it should be deeper than races, right? Because what do? We, some people are laid off. Like one of the things that I've been talking with a couple of my athletes who have lost some work through this thing, but they have their own business. They've been using this time, their running time, to like brainstorm, like clear their head, go out for that hour run, go at an easy pace so they can think really well, take their phone so they can take notes for their business, and like have a good thought, be like, oh yeah, I got to jot that down. Because you get home and you forget it, right? You get home and you're like, oh, what was I thinking about? There's something about my business that I should have, that was a great idea, but now I can't remember what it was. So that's one thing I've done through this thing too. It's just my own coaching business. I've like, did this like kind of internal check of like, what do I want to do? Where do I want my coaching business to go? And what do I want it to look like? How do I want to help people? And make sure you journal that or put it in your notes. Like I just carry my phone and put it in my notes. That way I can transfer it to my laptop when I get home. And then that becomes part of my long-term business plan.
Yeah. I also have found out with a lot of my running is solo. So you do have a lot more time to think, and, your mind is clear, and it's cool to kind of have your own time that, during the normal season, I'd be out with the team, doing workouts and stuff. And right now things have shifted, goals have shifted.
Totally.
But yeah, I've been keeping the mileage up as well. And it sounds like you have as well. I know vert is a big, is a big part of your training, and then just mileage in general. What are you looking at for an average weekly mile?
Well, I'll say I just looked at my Strava last night. I think I'm hovering right around 60 to 80 miles a week right now, with about 11,000 to 18,000 feet of climbing a week. So I've been hitting a lot of vert just because our foothills are opening up and we can get vert now. Our trails are opening up because the snow's receding. So I've been very motivated just to go see where the snow levels are and be like, oh, I can get up on that little peak there, or I can, I can get up on little stuff here and there. So I've been exploring a lot. I moved to Bozeman last summer, so trails are kind of still new to me. So I'm still doing some exploration as well. So that's been motivating. I'm doing some speed work. Once I kind of saw the data on this thing and seeing it not being as extreme as we originally thought, I kind of, for me personally, I was okay with doing a little bit of speed work. So I started doing some more quality work. And so I've been doing that for, probably 4 or 5 weeks now. I have to say, I want to race, man. I'm feeling really fit right now with all the strength challenge and like I kind of made my own challenge to run every day. From we were on spring break with our kids in Moab when this hit, and everything was talking about locking down, and we cut our trip short and came back to Montana. And I think I haven't taken a day off from running since then. I don't recommend that for everyone, but I've also been running for a long time and I have a lot of base, so I can kind of do these. I've done these challenges over in the springs where I do like little, 30 days straight, or, something like that. Every day May, that kind of thing. But I just decided, okay, it's a challenge. I'm just going to make myself run every day. And that's what I've done. So I'm like on 50, I'm approaching 60 days straight of running. So yeah, I'm feeling fit.
Well, once these races start back up, I think you might turn some heads because it sounds like the fitness is there, the motivation is there. Some of these young guns who, have been bringing this ultra marathon scene up. I think you might come after them once races.
Well, we'll see, right? I'm ready to race. Hardrock hasn't been canceled yet. Western States got canceled. Hardrock's they're going to make a decision by May 31st, so that's coming up here in the next less than 10 days. I'm hoping they have it, but I can understand if they don't. They have a lot of people come to that race, so if they don't, I'll probably do some like smaller regional races. I've heard maybe possibly that there might have some smaller races in Idaho coming up in July. So there's possibility of that. Otherwise, I'm going to do adventure running this summer. If a bunch of stuff gets canceled, I might go after a couple of FKTs or something. I don't want to waste my fitness. At my age, you don't waste your fitness. You better use it. If you've done the work, you better use it.
Right. Well, when we go back to when we talk about some of these younger athletes that are coming up in the scene, what do you think about these guys that have this track and road pedigree and are choosing the ultra marathon earlier on rather than going the traditional route? Do you think that is the way to go, or do you think there is something to be said about starting ultras at an older age?
I think it's whatever you're like kind of drawn to, like, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I think whatever you're passionate about. So if you're like feeling drawn to the trails, then come rip it up on the trails. Like, I think it's been cool to see it, like the progression of the sport over the last, say, 5 to 7 years has gone to a whole nother level. As far as like, one thing I realize now is like, I used to be able to just kind of put in the volume and do a little speed work and show up and win 100 miler, right? Like, but now it's like, no, if you're going to show up, you better show up ready. Like, you better have done your speed work. You better have done your vert. You better have done your volume. You got to do everything and show up kind of ready. And I think that's, for me personally, as a coach and an athlete, it's fun. It's fun to have that, like, somebody raise the bar just ever so slightly higher. And then every year it seems the bar goes a little higher. I mean, Western States is a perfect example of how competitive that race has been and has become, and the times have gone down and down and down for the top 10, where it's just like, you got to, like, every year up your game. Like, last year I had to PR to be in the top 10. I had to PR at that race I've done 5 times, so, you hope you can do it at age 48 or whatever. So,
yeah, and you talk about Western States and then obviously Hardrock. That's pretty common now that you've been doing the Western States Hardrock double. How did you get started doing that, and why? What was the reason?
Well, in 2016, so I've done the double now 2 times, 2016, 2018. Both of those races are hard to get into. And Western States, I got into Hardrock first in 2016, but then Ultra became my sponsor. Ultra became a sponsor of the race at that time, and they got a slot. And I knew that sponsors got slots, so I immediately, as soon as I found out they were going to be a sponsor in 2016, I'd been trying to get in for 6 or 7 years because I did it as my first 100 in 2002, but I'd never been able to get back in because it was so hard to get in the lottery. So I immediately emailed them and said, hey, if you have a slot, I would love one. And they emailed me back and said, yeah, we'll be happy to give you one of the slots. And they got 2 slots. And I was like, okay, I'll take one. And so then everyone started saying, like, hey, are you going to drop out of Hardrock? Well, no, that one's hard to get into too. So I was already in it. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do both. My plan was to go race Western States and then just finish Hardrock. But then I had someone point out that, hey, there's a double record, like, to do the combined times of those 2 races. And a buddy of mine who was also an ultra athlete at the time, Nick Clark, he had the record. He lives in Fort Collins. And that's when my wheels started turning. I was like, well, okay, but it's 100 miler, 200 miles back to back. You don't know what's going to happen. You might have an injury after the first one, or a niggle that doesn't go away. So what I ended up doing was just basically going in, racing Western States, and then seeing what I could do at Hardrock. But I found out that I felt really good going into Hardrock. I felt strong, I felt consistent, and I ended up, getting the record. And then that didn't scare, from that point on, it didn't scare me off. Like since 2014, I've been doing like 300 to 500s a year. So I always have done a back-to-back, within 2 or 3 weeks of each other, or 4 weeks in my last 2 of the season when I'm doing multiple ones. And so I knew kind of how to recover for them. And so then, fast forward to 2018, I got in, I was still in the top 10 at Western States every year. And then I didn't get in the lottery in 2017 at Hardrock. I was on the wait list, but I didn't make it in. And so then I stayed in the top 10, and then I did it again in 2018. And then I was supposed to do it again this year or last year, but then Hardrock got canceled because of the big snow year and all the avalanches. And then fast forward to this year, and now we're in Western States got canceled, and now Hardrock's still holding on. We'll see. I hope it doesn't get canceled. That would be 2 years in a row, man. I would feel more horrible for all the people that have been trying to get in to have to wait again, because it's like that'd be 2 years in a row where you're not even being considered for the lottery. So that I would feel really bad for all those people.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate for you as well, because, you've been unlucky now 2 years in a row. And I know that double, it does mean a lot to you, and you're always trying to get those times lower and lower. But I'm hopefully in the future we'll see it happen. But when we look at races, when we look at records, there might not be any in the near future, but what we have been seeing is these treadmill records. I don't know if you saw Zach Bitter.
Yeah, I got to be one of the speakers during that, one of the MCs for 30 minutes. Dude, I don't know how running 100 miles on treadmill. Whew. I don't know, man.
Never do? Is that something
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would want to do that. I mean, I like the treadmill. It's a great tool. Tool. But, oh man, running that long on a treadmill seems horrible. But
well, so he ran for, I think it was a little over 12 hours.
Yeah, he was going for the 12-hour record, and then he was on pace for the 100-mile record too.
Yeah.
So he got both within 40 minutes of each other, I think.
Unreal. And I think it came out to about under 7:20 pace. For someone who doesn't know, what does it take to get to that level? What kind of athlete? I mean, is there anyone else or other athletes that can even come close to that kind of performance right now?
I don't know. I mean, Zach's really proven over the last few years that when it comes to, over the last 6 or 7 years, that when it comes to flat, runnable courses, that he's kind of unbeatable in that. He's very strong at run. I mean, he has the world record for the treadmill 100, the world record for the treadmill 12-hour, the world record for the 100-mile track. He's kind of owns that space right now. So since he has the world record, I'd say no one can compete with him right now. But that's his thing, right? That's his strength. And that's what's cool about ultra running. There's so many different nuances to people, he's really good at that. But, you put him in a race like Western States, I think he got 11th last year or something like that, which is the worst place to get at Western States, just outside the top 10. And so he ran well there, but he's still that's a tough, there's so many other factors that, the heat and the technicality of the race and the vert, and, there's so many other things that you have to deal with.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And even when you look at from, my background on the track, and you see these elite 800-meter runners, milers, who don't would never consider a 5K or a 10K, and you'd think it would translate, but everyone has.
It doesn't always.
No.
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, for you, what would you say your strength lies on the ultramarathon scene?
Mountain races. So anything that's more technical, mountain. I'm really good at technical stuff. that kind of stuff, mountain races, would probably be my number one strength. I'm okay on other stuff, but I'm definitely better on when there's more vert, I'm better.
You like to grind out there on the course.
I like to grind. I like to power hike. I mean, I'm a good power hiker, and I'm a good downhill runner too, technical downhill runner. So, I like that kind of stuff. That's what I train on. That's what I have, where I live and where I've always lived. I've always had some kind of vert or good trail access and mountain access. So, that's what speaks to me. So that's what I'm passionate about, so that's what I like to do.
So you like to climb, you like to grind. Are there any courses that you haven't ran yet that you might want to do in the future?
Oh, there's a whole bunch, man. I mean, there's a ton of European races I'd love to do. I've never done Angeles Crest in Southern California, that 100. That's on my list of races to do. Scout Mountain 100 in Pocatello, and Luke Nelson's race. I'd love to do that race. It's too close to Western States, so I've got to be out of Western States before that happens. But there's just Uray 100. I'd love to do that one. That one's looks cool to me. There's so many. I'm scheduled for Hellbender 100 in North Carolina, which was supposed to be in April, and it got postponed to November. Right now, they were able to move their permit, so hopefully I'm running that in November. There's a ton of bucket list races out there that just are amazing that I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to have enough time in a lifetime to get them all done.
Yeah, there is so many great options, and nowadays it's hard to pick. But when we start looking at difficulty of courses, and maybe whether it is how long it is or just temperature conditions on course, is there any race that you won't consider right now because maybe it's too tough or just not your style?
I'd say Badwater 135 miler. That one just sounds horrible to me. I mean, I know there's people love that race, but I just don't see the allure for me. Having to run on the white line so your shoes don't melt. That sounds horrible. And nothing against the race director, or the race itself. Everyone likes certain things and has certain challenges, and to each his own. Right? But it's just not my cup of tea. That's one people because it's so well known. Tons of people ask me about that one every time. Have you ever done Badwater? I'm like, do you want to do Badwater? I'm like, not really. I'd rather do all the 200s before. And that intrigues me. After coaching a few people, and I coached Mike McKnight last year to the Triple Crown win and winning all three 200s in the U.S. The strategy of 200s and it's just such a different beast that I think that I'm. The first couple of years, people ask me, "Would you do a 200?" Probably not. And the more I've coached it, the more I'm intrigued by it, by the distance, and that makes me want to do Tour de Gent and in Italy. So I think that's, you'll see me in the near future stepping up to that distance.
Wow. Yeah. 200 miles to me is just unimaginable. It's just such a long time. I know you don't have much experience, but is that something, are you sleeping during that period? Are you taking small naps? Because it seems like such a long time you're out on
they have sleep stations and you can sleep on the course too. If you just wanted to find some pine needles and put your hood up and lay down. That's what after coaching several people to I've coached several people to the Triple Crown running all three 200s in 1 year. And then I've coached multiple people just running one 200. I think what I was learning from them, and the first few I coached, I was learning from them probably more than they were learning from me. I was helping them with strategy, but it was all guessing game because it just was one of those distances we just don't have a lot of experience at. But now that I've coached it for multiple years and multiple people, there's a lot of strategy that goes into that because the courses or the aid stations are farther apart. So you think 20 miles, 25 miles apart. So you have to be a little more self-sufficient. So in training, you have to be more self-sufficient. You have to be willing to do some multi-day training, or maybe you start in the evening and then run through the night with a small sleep in the middle, and learning how to do that and what that looks like. So the sleep in those races, in the leaders, there's hardly sleeping at all. If you look at like Mike McKnight last year, winning all three, he won all three, and then he broke his own course record for the triple. I think most of those he didn't sleep over 5 to 20 minutes total.
Wow.
So he just waited till he was sleepy, and then he just would crash for like 5 minutes. And he literally would let himself, like when he won, I don't want to say it was Bigfoot, but I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Bigfoot. He literally came into one of the aid stations, and his wife had his pickup there, and she was crewing in him. And he's like, I am so tired. I'm just going to get in the truck and lay down for like, 20 minutes. Wake me up in 20 minutes. He laid down. He literally said he fell asleep, woke up on his own, and was like, thought he'd been asleep for a while. And he got out and he was upset with his wife. He's like, why'd you let me sleep so long? She's like, you've been asleep for like 5 minutes. And he's like, well, I feel great. Like he was gone. And so like you kind of have to wait for that, your own unique sleep to hit you, and then you take it.
Yeah.
I had another athlete who he did the Triple Crown. He was more of a back of the packer. So it was taking him like 3 days, So he was doing sleep where he just wait till he was sleepy. He wouldn't worry about the sleep stations, and he would just put his headphones on with noise canceling app and an alarm for 20 minutes. And he would just lay down. So wait till he's really tired and like falling asleep on his feet, put those on, put on his 20-minute alarm, put his hood up and just look for pine needles and lay down the pine needles on the side of the trail and crash out for 20 minutes. And he said he would like wake up and he'd be like fully ready to go again. Full, like not stumbling, not drunk acting. And it's just that little bit of a trick to the body that makes it like all of a sudden you're fine for another like 12, 24 hours.
That's crazy how you can trick your body with just a small,
right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
At the end of these races, or really in a 200-mile race, at even just the middle stages, you get so tired. In your experience with ultramarathons, have you ever gotten to the point where you're hallucinating at all, or seeing weird things, or your body just acting in a strange way?
Yeah, like not a ton. I mean, I've done 3900s, no 200s yet. That's coming. So I can't speak to the 200s hallucinations, but in Hardrock in 2007, I was hypoxic, so I think that contributed, which means just your O2 saturation level, oxygen saturation level is low. So I was in the 80 or 70s, probably 75, 80 miles in, and it was the middle of the night, and I was having this, like where you're falling asleep on your feet, so you're kind of in and out of consciousness, and I was by myself. I didn't have a pacer, and like the closest to hallucinating for me is your eyes play tricks on you, like whether it's a stump and you think it's a bear, or like what happened to me was really unique, that I thought the ground was moving, but it was actually, I was just walking through this basin, and under my headlamp there were tall grass, and this clump of grass was moving in front of me, and I was like, what is, like, I kind of was like, oh, it kind of freaked me out. And then I realized it was a porcupine.
Oh my God.
With its quills up, like it was all quilled out, like, and it looked like a patch of grass because the quills were about the same height as the grass it was in. And so it just looked like this clump of grass waddling down the trail. And under my headlamp, and I was so tired and fatigued and out of it that I thought the ground was moving in front of me. And so it kind of, it gave you like this, like I kind of felt off kilter, and then I had to kind of shake off the sleep. And I was like, then I realized it turned sideways and then went into the grass. And then I realized, oh, wait, no, that's not grass. So that really freaked me out. And I ended up taking a nap during that race because I was just so hypoxic and I needed a reset. And I ended up sleeping like 45 minutes at like mile 80, early 80s until the dawn. And then like woke up and it was dawn out. It was light out. I was like, I got up, got moving, and limped out of there. And pretty soon you're loose again and got moving. So
Yeah, I've heard of a couple athletes as well who they kind of dig themselves in that hole, and sometimes the only thing you can do is just take a step back and just recover and figure out how you're going to dig yourself out because especially in when you're talking about getting altitude and just how your body reacts to low oxygen levels, it's like there's not much you can do.
No, sometimes you just need a reset, like one of the things I've worked Kroger's Canteen as a volunteer, the highest aid station on the Hardrock course, which we pack 24 pack loads up to this 1,100 feet and a mile and a half, or 1.2 miles, 1,100 feet up to 13.1 to this notch, and we set up an aid station. And like the tables are portaledges, climbing portaledges. Like it's just a really small platform. We can fit 7 volunteers in there plus a couple of runners that come through. And there's a 3-pitch snowfield on the north side and a big scree field on the other side. And it literally is this cliff band of like this tiny notch you go through. And it's maybe, 10 feet by 12 feet spot to stand. But one of the things we realized, one of the things you try to push athletes to do as they come through, the runners as a volunteer, is that they're so out of it at 13.1 when they're fatigued at mile, the year I volunteered, they switched the way they go in direction, counterclockwise, clockwise every year. So it's either mile 31 or 32 and mile 68, depending. And the year I did it was your mile 68. So you're working through the night. And these people are coming at mile 68. They're hypoxic. They're coming up to 13.1. And then they sit in our aid station and they're all out of it because they're at 13.1. And so you're like trying to push them, like you'll feel a lot better in Telluride. It's only 5 miles downhill and there's a lot more oxygen down there. Like get down there and recover. If you're going to take a break down there. You just got to make another 5 miles. So we always try to shove them out the door, at that aid station, because it's really hard when you're fatigued and you're in the middle of that to make good decisions. And especially if you're behind on nutrition, you're behind on calories, or you're having trouble keeping calories down and you're throwing up, you see that in sometimes ultra marathons, especially in hundreds, later in the race, a lot of GI stress. So people are having trouble absorbing things and keeping it down. And that just causes a whole cascade of problems with, you're talking about, hallucinations and bad decision-making skills, because you're just not thinking straight.
Yeah. And when we talk about bad decision-making, another problem that sometimes I know in my experience with a couple friends that I have is people miss going the wrong direction on the course. And we've seen it with Jim Walmsley and top athletes going the wrong direction. Is that something that you've experienced before? And how do you kind of minimize the risk of that happening on these courses that are just so massive?
Well, the Hardrock course in particular is very minimally marked, and they tell you that up front. You need to kind of have some familiarity with the course. Most people have come and scouted a little bit. If it's their first time, they should. I say that. If you ever get into Hardrock, go scout. Go there early. Know what you're getting into. But I think a lot of it, what I coach my athletes to do is, one, study the course on the map. Know the map, know the confusing turns where it could be confusing. If you have the availability to go scout a little before, by all means do that. Most people don't. So you have to the first time I go to a new race, I always know it kind of in my head on the map. And I know okay, there's some key intersections here that I need to know about and remember that might be confusing. So one is familiarity and having some pre-course knowledge, not just going in I'm just going to follow the flags. Because sometimes elk and moose eat the flags, they think they look like yummy flowers and they end up eating them and then they're gone, and most race staff will go back and check flags within the 24 hours of the race, even if they marked it a week before. But sometimes, sometimes it gets vandalized. I've had races that I've been in where, Hardrock, for instance, I've run an extra 2 miles during that race because I missed a flag that a truck was parked in front of the flag, and you were supposed to go up a road and then cut cross country in the grass across a creek and then pick up a trail on the other side of the creek. a different trail system, and because you just came out of an aid station, but I just ran right by it because a truck was parked for the aid station right in front of the flag, and I didn't see it. I ended up running like a mile up, and then I ended up like, wow, there's no flags. And I ended up running back and finding the flag, and then there's been times when I thought I was off course and like backtracked. Another one is GPS routes. Like, so if you can get a GPX route of the actual course, so that way you can be like, I haven't seen a flag for a while. You can get out your map and be like, oh yeah, I'm on the course. Cool. I learned that at Hardrock. Again, I keep bringing up Hardrock, but it seems to be that one's the one that's the hardest one to navigate. I did a backtrack in the middle of the night, like well over a mile backwards downhill at 12, 13,000 feet because I hadn't seen a flag, and I thought I was off course. And I went back to the last flag, and which was over a mile and a half, or about a mile, 1.2, I think it was 2.4 miles total. I went 1.2 miles back downhill at high altitude above tree line, went back down to the last flag, looked all over, made sure I didn't miss anything, and then realized, oh man, I was on course. And so then like have to backtrack, and then you have to manage that mentally when that happens. So I think that's one. And one is just paying attention. You have to learn to pay attention during the race and constantly have that part of your race strategy is like being like always engaged. I haven't seen a flag. Where's the flag? Don't just follow the person in front of you, because if they miss it, you miss it. So you're always looking for flags. You're always looking for the turns. If you come to an intersection that's not marked, you might be off course. It either got vandalized or it's got off course. I've had that happen at Wasatch 100 where they had a high, it was like up to a lake. The trail section was up to a lake and that we were passing through. And so it had a ton of traffic, and someone had pulled flags and just thrown them in the brush. And so they were right in the middle of an intersection, just a bunch of flags in a pile in the middle. So it was like a 50-50 guess. It's like, do I go right or do I go left? And so I went left about a half a mile, came to another intersection of trail, no flags. That's when I realized I'd gone the wrong way. So I went back to the place and went the right way. But I mean, that's part of trail racing. Like, you can't get mad, right, that happens. You just have to like pay attention, don't have your head down all the time, those kind of strategies.
Yeah, and you've obviously learned a lot over the years. You've been doing this for 20 years, and it's awesome to hear that you're taking everything you've learned and then, helping other ultra marathoners achieve, peak performance on their end. Can you talk a little bit more about your coaching? Who are you coaching? What do you specialize in? What goes into the whole process?
I've kind of, there's a couple of kind of things I kind of specialize in. One would be kind of optimized fat metabolism. So kind of a high fat, low carb diet in your everyday diet, or strategic carbohydrate use, meaning we're eating like low glycemic foods, real foods that don't affect your insulin levels, that keeps you fat burning at a higher level in your metabolism in your everyday life. That carries over into training. And then we use carbohydrates strategically around effort and volume to kind of fine tune that. So you get all the pop back, but you get the benefit of burning fat at a higher rate per minute. That makes you more bonk proof. That means you have to eat less per hour during a race, because there's two schools of thought here. One is you optimize your fat metabolism in my camp, right? And that means you eat less per hour because you're burning some of your fueling needs, your energy needs from onboard fat. And then there's another camp that says, well, you just need to train yourself to eat as much as possible per hour, like 300 calories per hour. And so you don't bonk and you can handle all that carbohydrate, right? Whereas that one works for if you have an iron gut. But if you have a gut that doesn't like a lot of calories, usually that ends up having a bunch of GI stress in the second half of 100, especially, or in races. So what I've done is like my camp, which is like Zach Bitter, myself, Mike McKnight, who's one of my athletes who just ran 100 miles with no calories. I don't know if you saw that, but on social media, he did his own 100-mile route in the valley he lives in during this pandemic. And he came to me and decided, hey, I want to run 100 miles with no calories. No one's ever done it. But on paper, we always said like, hey, it should be able to be done, but no one's ever done it. And so that we know of at least. And so he went and did it. He went and ran on just electrolytes and water, and we did bulk electrolytes instead of pills because the capsule has a little calorie in it. There's like 2 calories. So we decided he wasn't going to do capsules. If he was going to truly do 0 calories, he was going to do water and then bulk supplements. So he did Redmond sea salt, potassium citrate, and magnesium citrate, which is powder form. He bought in bulk in 1 kilo, and he would just put it in Ziplocs, and he would lick his finger and stick his finger in the bag and put it in his mouth and wash it down with water. So that's kind of how he did it during the thing. He did it 70% road route at 4,700 feet in the valley he lives in Logan, Utah, or in Cache Valley, Utah. And he just mapped out a 100-mile a big loop in the valley and went and did it on his own, and had a couple friends come and a photographer come and document it, and got it done in 18 hours and 37 minutes. So, you know, that's kind of the extreme case, right? Of like what I coach. But most of the people that are coming to me are 30, 40, 50 some years old, middle back of the packers that just want to, one, lose some weight. You know, they might want to deal with nutritional shift. They're looking for race day nutrition, race day strategies. A lot of them are coming to me with GI stress. So I'm helping with that because optimized fat metabolism, like I said, allows you to eat less calories per hour because you're relying a percentage of your energy needs from your onboard fat stores. And so then you don't have to eat as much per hour. And so then you have less GI stress because you're intaking less over the course of that, you know, ultra marathon. So I have some people coming to me for that. You know, I offer custom training plans. I have some box training plans that you can buy on Training Peaks as well. So if you can't afford monthly coaching, you can just go buy, you know, a 20-week plan to run a 50 miler or whatever. So that's kind of like the different facets of my training. I kind of adhere to the philosophies of a combination of kind of coaching philosophies. Arthur Lydiard, Jack Daniels, Tim Noakes, and also, you know, the newer book that came out, Training the Uphill Athlete, that was Johnston, Steve House, and Killian Jornet. So that's one of my favorite new books for training. If anybody out there looking for training manuals that's trying to self-train, that's a really good one to have on your shelf as a runner. Because it's very geared towards the mountain runner and mountain pursuits. So it's for like skimo racing, mountaineering, and ultra marathon mountain races. And so I helped, I wrote a short story for that book, and Patagonia put it out as a publisher. So, you know, there's a lot of Patagonia athletes in that one. So I'm in the book quite a bit in that one. Just because they had a big library of photos already. But yeah, that's kind of my coaching general services. But you know, a little bit I do some nutritional stuff that specialize in high fat, low carb, and then, you know, trail racing and I have a couple athletes that are just getting in, their first time ultra marathoners. Some have 20 years experience and want to get fat, still are motivated to get faster, and they're in their 50s, you know? So it just depends on the person. I kind of customize for whatever their goals are and whatever they're trying to do.
So your athletes are, I'm sure, coming to you for race advice, obviously nutrition, training cycles. Do you ever have athletes ask you for shoe advice?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the, well, I mean, any runner, like, shoes are what runners are into, man. That's our candy, you know? So yeah, we talk about running, trail running, or running road shoes, trail shoes, you know, where to use them, what to use, what should I use for this race? What should I have as a backup shoe, you know, for the race? Depends on the race, right? Whether it's runnable surface, whether it's super technical, whether it's going to be muddy. So, you know, obviously I'm a ultra athlete. So I'm very specific to Ultra's brand. And I'm in their test size. So I've been a big tester in there and helped with like design. And actually I'm supposed to be on a phone call later today with the design team, talking about footwear. So, super stoked. I love that. I mean, I geek out on shoes. I love it.
Well, what's your current lineup looking like for training and racing for, the current lineup so far? I don't want to get too far ahead with the future stuff, but
So, road shoe right now, my favorite road shoe is the Viho, the new Viho. It's really, really solid. I love it. Before that, it was the Torin, but this is my new favorite for road running or like flat, easy trail running. I've used. It's got good traction for a road shoe too. So it's a good like marathon type trainer. So that's road. And in the past, I've really, really been a big advocate and loved the Lone Peak, but I helped with the testing of the Temp 2.0, and I really fell in love with that shoe, the new prototype. So the new one that just came out. And so I was a big tester and wear tester and feedback loop on that shoe. I raced in it all last season before it came out. I'm really, really into that shoe. That's my main training shoe right now. I'm rotating two pairs of them right now. So for you guys out there, you should always buy 2 pairs, even if it's the same model. There's been studies that show you have a 21% decrease in risk of getting injured if you just alternate the same model of shoe every other day. So every day you rotate. So because you get different wear patterns in shoes. And then if you can rotate different models, so they say like the Lone Peak and the Temp, you would get, it's like 28%. So like either way you rotate. So I'm always rotating models, even if it's the same model. If I'm going to do a bunch of hardcore stuff in the mountains, I'm usually in the Temp or the Lone Peak, depending on conditions. Like I run in the Lone Peak RSM in the winter because I have snow. So I have the gaiters. I've got sheet metal screws in mine to stud them. And so I have traction. And then I use the Lone Peak if it's really going to be a gnarlier race. I've also I really like the Superior as well for like shorter trail races, faster trail races, or if I'm going to go do like speed work on a trail, like I really like the Superior. So, and I'm currently testing the Superior 5, so the prototype. So little teaser for you out there like the Superior. It's a good redo.
Well, when we talk about updates, you said the Temp was a shoe that you were a part of. And when we look at the past versions, I know some people really love that shoe, and it has transitioned a little bit. Can you talk about what you liked about the new one, what you liked about the old one, how they do differ?
So the tread on the old one, so the 1.5, the tread was more aggressive, but the shoe was quite a bit heavier, like well over an ounce heavier. And some of the critiques of the shoe of the 1.5 was that it was pretty wide shoe. So it was good for a wide foot, but if you had a narrower, lower volume foot, like I have a wide forefoot, but a low volume foot. So it like the laces were really close together for me on the 1.5. And whereas they've thinned down the upper and lightened the whole shoe for the 2. So the Temp 2 has the laces are way farther apart. So those of you who have really wide feet, it's going to be a big change for the 2. But it's still like for anyone who felt that the 1.5 was a little too wide or a little sloppy because of how much room there was in volume in the upper, the 2 addressed that. And so I would consider the Temp now to be like it went on a diet. It's slimmer, it's sleeker, it drains really well, it's pretty meshed out. It's got still got really good traction. They used a designer that like had worked on mountain bike tires. And so the mountain bike tread, it's got like these little star patterns on the tread on the bottom, and they're really grippy in every direction. So it's solid, but they're not gigantic lugs anymore like the old shoe. So that's the biggest difference I see between 1.5 and 2.
And how long have you been with Ultra so far?
This is my sixth season, so 6 years now, since beginning of 2015.
Okay, so you've been running in Ultra shoes for 6 years. with Ultra, there's kind of two features that you hear about the most. That foot-shaped toe box, which is a little more roomy toe box, let your toes splay. And then, of course, the zero drop design, 0 millimeter offset, which is going to give you that natural running feel. Can you talk about those two factors? And maybe for someone who's never worn an Ultra shoe, what are you going to get from a shoe like Ultra?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is trying to find one of the models that fits your foot the best, because you do want it to fit across the midfoot, because you don't have a narrow toe box, you have room for your feet to naturally splay like they should barefoot, right? So basically what we're doing is take how your foot functions naturally in a barefoot form and go out, run on grass or go jog around the block or something with bare feet. And really all we're doing is putting padding under that foot. And so that we have protection. So it allows your foot to function. That's what the zero drop is all about, is letting your foot function the way it's in your lower leg, function the way it's supposed to, where you're naturally born with no high heel, right? And then the foot-shaped toe box allows that big toe to function. And that's the one thing about having a narrower toe box. When you push your big toe over, let's imagine this is your big toe, right? I'm showing you on this video. If you push your big toe over, it shuts off proprioception up the chain, right? So the arch doesn't engage, because the big toe is your first line of information to the brain. It says engage arch, right? And for your Achilles to engage and everything to happen up the chain. And when you shut that big toe off, then everything else up the chain has to pick up the slack for stabilization. And there's a lag, right? So that's the benefit of having a foot-shaped toe box, is you're not shutting off your big toe, which is your information sensor.
Yeah, Ultra, it's one of those shoes that I've started to use, and it has its own place in my cycle shoes, and it's interesting. And I think for runners that want to try a zero drop shoe, it's an awesome option. So,
Well, yeah, and I would also say out there to you people that are new to it, any runners new to Ultra, don't just like shift over cold turkey. Take your old models that you've been running in and run in Ultras every other day, right? And then slowly transition over a month or two to do it, and because you are going to have you might have slightly sore calves because you're flexing a little more at the Achilles, right? Because you don't have a built up heel. And one thing we've seen too is if the transition's faster, the higher the stack height. So a little more padding under there, then the transition is going to be a smoother transition. So first go to a bigger stack height and then slowly go down to a lower stack height if you're new to an Ultra shoe.
So what would you say is potentially a shoe that would be a good first shoe that has maybe a little bit more cushioning?
I think for a trail shoe, either the Olympus or the Temp. The Olympus is their maximalist, so that's only if you're into maximalist stuff. But the Temp's a good one because it's like 28, 29 mil drop, and it's at that really good kind of slight rocker shape. So there's the transition on it's really good. I think that's probably a good intro shoe. And then Paradigm maybe for a road shoe. Would it be a good intro shoe? If you've been in pretty minimalist shoes and thinner shoes with 4 mil drop for a long time, you could probably shift pretty quickly to any of their shoes. But I'm saying if you're coming from something like a 10 or 12 mil drop or an 8 mil drop, I would be just be cautious. That's my advice.
Well, it's great to hear about shoes from the Ultra expert. I know you've ran in pretty much everything over the past 6 years, so yeah. It's cool to hear that. Let's move on forward. We reached out on social media to the fans, and we got some questions for you.
All right, good. Bring it.
So the first question is from a younger athlete. So this is cool to hear about younger runners interested in the Ultra. And he asks, I'm in high school but would like to run Ultras. What's the best way to get into the sport?
Uh, I think the best thing you can do is consistently run, make it a habit, make running habit, like 5, 6 days a week, take at least one rest day a week, 1 or 2 rest days, listen to your body. If you're feeling beat up, take an extra rest day if you're feeling beat up. Well, running ultra training is not much different than marathon training. So meaning one long run a week and then a bunch of maintenance runs during the week, meaning, anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on where you are in training cycle and what your background and history is with running and, how long you've gone before. And then don't add more than 10%, 10 to 15% per week overall volume. So, if you're bumping up your mileage on your long run, keep all your maintenance runs the same and then bump up your long run. And once you get to a plateau of long run and you're like, oh, I'm doing, 18-mile long runs or 20-mile long runs, then you could bump up one of your other runs during the midweek or something. And slowly transition to like just having that lifestyle habit of running daily. And then practice on like terrain of the ultra you want to run. So if you pick up 50K that you want to run or whatever, like go train at least a couple days a week if you can on like terrain. So specificity matters, because if you've been just training on the road and then you go do, a 50K mountain race that has 7,000 feet of climbing, you're going to be destroyed when you're done with that run. And it's not going to be that fun the last 10 miles of that race, because you're not going to even be able to run downhill because your quads are going to be blown out. So you have to get ready for eccentric pounding on the downhill and running trails and navigating all the obstacles and getting used to that variable leg speed and your variable stride lengths. The stutter stepping sometimes you have to do in technical sections, or, hopping down off things. So like practice that in your everyday life. And then if you have access to that kind of terrain, get out and practice it.
Yeah, I know you are, when we ran together, you were teaching me the hops and the stutter steps out on the technical trails. So I know how important that is. And it's even crazy when we see questions like this, because 20 years ago, when you probably started doing this ultra, you probably never saw high school kids, looking up to ultra marathons and, thinking about that. So
I started when I was 29. I think I ran my first ultra when I was 29, and I was like a youngster, Now it's like, yeah, that's like average, So.
Yeah. Well, this next question, I was curious because I don't know how long you've had this, but the question is, how did you end up with your iconic style? So is this something that we've seen since the start, or has this been a gradual, style progression over the years?
Well, I wear glasses, and so early on in my career, my eyesight isn't horrible. So like in a really bad conditions, and it's humid and hot, and like you can't keep your glasses clean, I've had to take them off in like maybe 2 races over the last 20 years. But I can still see. It's just not great. It's like, things are like soft focus. So I was looking for glasses that wouldn't fog, that were sports specific back in the early 2000s. And I came across Rudy Project at the time. And it was just a dealer in Bend, Oregon, that carried Rudy Project, and they had their own like eyewear. They could put your RX in it. And I wanted my prescription in it. And so I got that done. And it was just like game changer for me, because I was a mountain biker, a skier, a trail runner at the time, and just not have these like glasses that were constantly slipping down on my face, and be able to see and at that time it was the early technology of UV sensitive stuff. And so that's kind of the background of how I got the glasses look. Was I found them, and then later on I got connected with Rudy Project as a sponsor, and then they started doing RX too. So they started doing like, you just send in their prescription and you can get the RX. And so that was kind of the glasses thing. I wear prescription glasses, and I wanted something that didn't fog and that functioned. And the technology's changed a lot in the last 20 years as far as just the lenses and the lens technology. They're way lighter, and Rudy Project's they have like pinchable nose pieces on their sports models and bendable earpieces, so you can do it on the fly and it doesn't break, you know. So so that's where the glasses came from, you know. I was a graphic designer for 15 years, so I liked that little bit of a funkiness, you know. It's kind of like having black frame glasses, you know, when you're an art director. You know, wear all black and black frame glasses, right? And then other than that, man, I you know, like I've always I've had earrings forever, and you know, the hat thing, I'm bald, so it protects me from the sun. And you know, the Patagonia, you know, duckbill hat that came out, you know, they reintroduced that because I every design offsite at Patagonia, I like hammered them. Because they made that hat with the white mesh. They made that hat forever, and then they discontinued it. And I still had a couple old models, and I was wearing them to the point where they had holes in them. But I had so many people coming up to me at races going, "I loved that hat that Patagonia made. Why don't they make that anymore?" So I would always pass that along to the design team. And finally, one design offsite, they traced one of my hats because they didn't even have the like pattern anymore. And so they traced the hat, and then they came out with it, and they sold out the first year, and they've been selling ever since. And they're an awesome hat because you can break them down, you can dip them in a creek, and like, you know, use them like a wash rag. You can put them in your pocket. So that's kind of what I consider, I guess, if you're talking about, I guess that's what you mean by iconic look. If that's what you're talking about.
Definitely. No, that's interesting to hear how that all came into place.
And the pop-up bill when I race is because I wear glasses, and think about it as like a foil, a race foil. When you put it up, airflow goes down over the glasses, keeps you even more anti-fog capabilities. So that's what you'll see me with my hat popped up a lot that way, and that's why.
So not only style, there's also some performance benefits.
There's performance functionality there.
Awesome. Well, the last question I have for you, I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but where did you get the nickname Bronco Billy, and what's the meaning behind it?
So I grew up on a farm. So I'm a country boy at heart. I grew up on a 700-acre farm in Missouri. When I moved to Oregon and I lived in Bend, Oregon, my first, or one of my ultra running friends, who was at the time the fast ultra runner in town in 2002, Jason Moyer, good friend of mine. He and I trained a ton together, and we used to have this kind of ongoing joke because I had a friend from Wyoming that I used to climb with in Denver who always yelled "Giddy up," and we all yelled it when we go on climbing trips. So "Giddy up" became this like this meant like, you know, step up, like time to giddy up, you know? And like, so I continued to use that. We used it for so many years as climbers that I continued to use it when I moved to Oregon away from my buddy in Wyoming. And so my new friend in Bend, I would yell "Giddy up" all the time, and he would yell, you know, he was like of Norse descent, right? He claimed to be a Viking, like 100% red-blooded Viking, and that he was from the Berserker tribe, that he was a direct descendant. And so I used to call him Berserker, and he would call me Bronco, because there was this like restaurant in Sisters, Oregon called Bronco Billy's, and he just started calling me Bronco Billy, and I would call him Berserker, and that was our like given nicknames to each other, and it was like an inside joke between each other, and so we never really used it. And I know this is kind of a long reasoning behind it, but I got to tell you the whole story. And so I would yell, you know, Berserker, he would yell Bronco Billy, and then fast forward to, you know, a couple years, and I started a blog before social media, and back when blogs were like, before even blogs were the thing. I started a blog because I was in technology and a graphic designer. I started a blog to share my running race reports from 100-milers and stuff with my family. My family in the Midwest were like, "What are you doing? You're running 100 miles? Are you crazy? Are you trying to kill yourself?" You know? And I wanted to share with them photos and like a race report. And then I started using the race report more for like my own benefit, to be like, oh, if I go back and run that again, I reread my race report and remember all the details and the mistakes I made. So I use it almost like an online diary. And because I had this, like, I started doing it every race, it became a library of information. Well, back before social media and coaching, there was no online coaching or anything like that, right? We're talking mid 2000s. Blogs became huge for ultra runners in the ultra running community. We were all reading each other's blogs and commenting and talking about performance and oh, I did this right and I did this wrong. And so it blew up. And what I did with my blog was, because I was a graphic designer and a branding person, I was trying to find my name, like jeffbrowning.com. It wasn't available. And broncobilly.com wasn't available, but Go Bronco Billy, because I was a branding person, I was like, oh, I need an action word, you know? And so I was like, Go Bronco Billy, you know? And so then after a few years, fast forward a few years of like the blog, people reading it, and I'd be at races and I would hear people say, Go Bronco, you know, when I'd run by. So people started knowing me as Bronco because of the blog. And then I had a bunch of friends start saying it too and using it as the nickname caught on because of that. And then next thing I know, like half my friends call me Bronco. Some people don't even know my real name. And that's how Bronco Billy came into existence. It took on its life of its own after a while.
Wow. So it all started with the blog, and, you know, nowadays the blogs are still relevant, but it's all about social media. And, you know, that's how I keep in touch and see what's latest with you. For the fans out there who want to stay up to date, everything Jeff Browning, where can they find you on social media?
Go Bronco Billy. So just Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Go Bronco Billy. My coaching website and athlete website is gobroncobilly.com. So all you gotta do is remember the action word, go Bronco Billy.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to keep up to date. I know you're looking fit. You've been doing the strength work. You've been doing the running. Once these races start back up, I know you're going to be looking to take some heads. So I'm extremely.
I'm ready, man. Let's do some stuff. We need stuff to open up.
Perfect. Well, once things open back up, we'd love to have you back here in SLO. We'll take you back on the trails, and
awesome.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Connor.
Hey, it's good to see you too. So until next time, that was the Running Warehouse Connection.
Giddy up.